Welcome to the Only Words podcast, where poets and poetry lovers talk about the role of the art in their lives and the modern world. My name is Riley Richards. Our guest on this episode is...
Hi, this is Luke Levi. I wanted to read to you poems from my upcoming book called Miracles Forgotten. I wrote this book of poems over the course of a few years. Some of these poems are in other books, but most of them haven't been seen before, except on social media. Most of these are about nature and beauty, and about wabi-sabi, which is the idea of beauty and imperfection. I'm inspired by Mary Oliver and Robert Frost, Carl Sandburg, and haiku poets. This collection is a little different than my other ones because these are mostly longer poems. Not so much haiku, but I do have some haiku in here. Anyway, I did want to write this to be kind of an antidote to a chaotic world, where most of the poems are pretty calming, because that's the main reason I write. It's kind of a calming experience, and I wanted to showcase that in this book. Some of them are spiritual poems, some of them are just nature focused, and some of them are about love, and I sometimes combine all those ideas into one. So I hope you like it. I'll read a selection from the book. This first poem is called Perfection is Illusion. It was first published in Tiny Seed Journal. Give me the sunburned flower, not the unwrinkled beauty. Let reality wash the color from roses so I could cradle them like seeds in their infancy. Give beauty no eyes but feeling caught in the signs of life, and I will let their bloodless petals fly from my palms as the wind takes them back to earth. This next poem is called Renewal. Tell me what the flowers know to wilt and return each new spring, with no tears about their fall into the dark warmth of earth. They must know that slumber is needed to let silence enter the soul. Renewal, a constant forever. Even death mends us. We return to the source of everything that is. That one is mostly about an idea of renewal in nature, but also in the soul. Just the idea of an afterlife, and kind of the tree of life analogy, but I was applying it to flowers, not just the trees, and that we might call something dead like flowers, but they return in spring, which to me, just like the title of the book, it's a sort of miracle, that we just kind of ignore sometimes. This next poem is called Fawn. The sun climbed down from each gold leaf and stepped its toes very lightly on the forest floor to sit with a newborn fawn. I watch deer often, and I always see deer in the forest. They use it as cover, so this poem was about that. This poem is called History of an Oak Tree. A flower lives fast and we remember it in winter. A tree grows slowly and we ignore its history. This oak tree, born in 1804, limbs low to the grass, watches its world change. A Comanche once sat his back against the tree and carved arrowheads. The world was quiet until others appeared. Wind through trees was a song. War fell through us, and some craved it. Others wanted to listen to the trees and the wind. A Comanche woman washed her long hair in the shadow of this oak, wondering if the trees have speech, what wisdom they would give. This was a prose poem where I detail the history of an old oak tree and what it's seen over the last 2 centuries, where it saw war and peace, contrasting the Comanche warrior against the woman who was peaceful. And I thought, that the tree saw so many things that it would have wisdom itself if it could communicate. This next poem is called A Rabbit Ate the Flower I Liked. The purple beauty was loved so much by a rabbit that she ate the flower and said, "Your beauty is now my own." How can I be angry at the rabbit? I have stolen honey from bees and tasted spring and summer and gold drops. As if I could carry the warm seasons inside of me, as if I stole beauty so that I would become its essence. I saw a rabbit eat a poppy flower, and then it just kept eating the other ones in my dad's garden, and I thought that was funny. After that, I assumed some other flowers that used to be there, such as a purple one, it was gone, so I assumed the rabbit ate that one too, but I thought it was kind of funny, just like the first time, that the rabbit just went up right in front of me while I was reading outside and ate the flowers. It didn't actually know what it was doing, but all I could see was just food and just ate it, even though it was right there in the garden. And I thought that was just a natural thing to do for the rabbit. She was just eating food. This poem is called The Ocean's Edge. In an ocean of love you drift, in a sailboat on calm waves, through water so clear you could see yellow fish in the shallow reefs. Light drifts and you drink it as if you're a flower. Nothing burns, not even your feet on the sand. We hear gulls laugh on the shore. Long ago they thought the ocean had an end. They imagined water drifting off the earth, becoming stars, the ocean being infinite as love. This one was based mainly on when I visited Hawaii with family, but it gradually became a little more than that, about love and infinite as it is, and how some people believe that some people today believe there's an edge to the earth, and I thought that was kind of funny but interesting, that where the water or where the ocean would fall off, where would it lead? Then it'd be like one of the Thor movies where the water just flows off into the universe, I guess, which was kind of funny, but it looked interesting on that movie, and it made me think of this image in my mind. This next poem is called A Home and Me. After weeks of dark clouds, I hungered for the light, and when summer came, I wished for darkness again. When sweating my weight, I wished for cold, and when the cactus froze to its core, I asked for heat. When love spoke to me in nature, I was lost in it, and when sadness returned, I held it in me. And after understanding the fall from a tower I made without support, I made a home in me. This one is more about the duality of light and dark and happiness and sadness, and how you might be in extreme heat like it is in Texas, where it gets above 100 degrees, you might wish for cold, and then when you are cold, you wish for heat, and so on. You keep going back and forth between those two states, and then no matter what, you made a home in whatever environment you're in. That's what I was implying at the end. This next poem is called Tree Light. It was featured by a magazine called Free the Verse 5-line features. Broken slants of light from the forest ceiling is a form of love I cup into my hands to drink. That one is a imagistic poem about the light coming down from the forest. Something that is interesting to see during certain times of the day. Usually in the evening. I might have a different feeling to seeing it. A different kind of light. This next poem is called Pond Turtles, about a nearby pond that I like to visit. At night, when thoughts travel to what was before and what is, I look upon slivers of a silver moon on the pond. Turtles poke their heads from the surface to breathe the scent of wildflowers. The past fades like little pond waves becoming still again. This poem was inspired by reading about Zen poetry, or reading Zen poems, and reading philosophical teachings from the East, where, the past is an invention of the mind. We only know the past through memory, of course. The mind makes up ideas, just like the past. But I wasn't thinking it as a negative thing, just that it's a bit calming to live in the moment, as Easterners believe, and Buddhists, and I think that's now here in the Western world where people try to stop and slow down, especially with books like The Power of Now and from Eckhart Tolle, I forgot how to say his last name, but that was a big inspiration to me. That book really helped me live better and be more in the present moment and to not react strongly and just be in the moment. Which brings up another poem I'd like to read. It's called If We Were Flowers. If we treated others like beautiful flowers, would there be conflict? Hearts must become uncorrupted and return to their child souls. But all this is wishful thinking as I walk among blooming spring. These flowers walk about without knowing they hold the entire universe in them. This was a spiritual poem. You might read the news and read about conflict, wars and genocides and all sorts of terrible things. And you might ask, why they're like that. Carl Jung explained that for all the people. He tried to explain why people followed Hitler and did all sorts of terrible things. He called them collectively unconscious. And I think it's like that for a lot of people. And once they wake up from that, then they can live. But it's hard to do, I think. I think you just have to sit in silence and mostly just become aware of yourself and your unconsciousness. To meditate, I think, would be the source. But I didn't want to tell people, what to do or anything. But it was just a poem written as I guess you might say a protest poem against war, against all violence, which of course is unnecessary, but some people believe it is necessary. I think if we are fully conscious, which is love, of course, then you don't harm others because you treat everyone as you would want to be treated, because everyone is the same. They're just one consciousness inside the body. And then when we die, consciousness leaves the body. At least that's my belief. I'd like to read another poem. This one is a micro poem called Memory. Memory is a fallen leaf in autumn, buried in the earth by the stomping of deer hooves, forgotten by the time of rising wildflowers. This is another imagistic poem. I'm inspired by imagist poets like William Carlos Williams, some of his poems, Carl Sandburg, as well, and many others. And this one is just about memory and how it fades in time. This next poem is Warfield. It's an anti-war poem. It can be found in an anthology called Heron Clan X. Brother, I am the dirt beneath your boots. Thousands of years I have grown flowers despite rattles of war disturbing my bed. See the flower there? A wild thing it is, popping up from the unmarked grave of a soldier like yourself. The yellow bit stained by sun. Brother, I'll give you a home here, a cocoon of dirt wrapped in warmth and humming of the earth's core that will keep you dreaming through violence. Sing to me that war song you chanted from your metal god, now that your heart is on the soil. Brother, they sent you away to die for their wealth, but I'll keep you safe soon, under stars soon to rise, in the darkness that will take you. After the moment when all feels well, and a flower will grow above you, so I must ask, what color will be your flower? I thought of this poem as kind of a spiritual being that talks to a soldier just before he dies and asks him what flower or flowers he'd like to be grown where his body will die. But at the same time, I thought it was kind of a welcoming home to the afterlife, and that it was saying that, you didn't have to die. I thought of Vietnam when I thought of this poem, where they fly in those choppers, and I've listened to veterans describe their experience there, and it's a little bit of everything. Strange and disturbing and violent and a bit surprising, and it was based on those videos and what I've read and heard, and I wanted to write this anti-war poem about them and how a lot of wars are unnecessary. They're just for exploitation, just for killing people and taking things, and it's not worthwhile. And America is, number one in documented war crimes. Only 17 years of peace in the history of the U.S., which I think people forget that we're just at constant wars, and we spend all the money and we send soldiers overseas to die for mostly just exploitation, extraction of minerals, resources, and I'm against all that. So this is, of course, a protest poem, but most of my poems are more calming. This poem is called The Heart Interprets. The eye only sees so much. The heart interprets what the eye sees. Beauty is perception. Some find war beautiful and crave suffering. The creek pot passes over smooth stones and trees sway in wind. My soul in the collective, like a sapphire below the creek. In this poem, I contrasted war with beauty, but I also said that some might find war to be beautiful, in that everything is perception. And then I compared myself to the collective, as I was implying that the collective is different. That is, the collective can be unconscious, as Carl Jung explained, for why so many Christians followed Hitler. If someone is unconscious, they can be led blindly. So I was comparing my soul with the collective, which I think in the history of the U.S. has been an unconscious collective. But there are some good people that want to fight and be against evil and corruption and all that. This next poem is called A Single Drop. Cover me during the dusk of this long dream with the sea blue flowers of spring, and burn me to smoke so I could be the wind's breath. Let me fall in the heat of a good day among the passion fruit that raccoons steal happily while under the white gold stars of night. And this heat budding red marking the end of this world, give me a drop of honey for when my body is a withered flower, as a remembrance of when life touched me strongly, a single drop to ease the dusk of life. I wrote this in as a perspective of someone who was about to die and who had fond memories of nature and blue flowers and raccoons stealing their fruit, and that where in this scenario he wants a drop of honey as a remembrance of the past, because he thought of honey as something that was in his past, maybe something he had during childhood. This next poem is called Let Us Live for Once. Let us not go mildly into summer, else we'd rush through and forget love and the flowers, listening to birdsong. Let us stop to bask and live for once, to see the butterfly and bees sharing what flowers bring to wanderers. Let us not ignore the colors of life and hate imagined things that crumble far easier than the petals of a rose. Let us breathe like a bear waking from its long slumber to witness waterfalls ever flowing to home. This next poem is Nostalgia. It's a prose poem. There is a nostalgic feeling to singing crickets at night. It invokes memories, the solitude of night, peacefulness and listening without thought, calmness in the world asleep. An owl hoots on an oak branch. Its voice echoes in the valley full of moonlit wildflowers. Does the owl remember when, once she could fly, she was left to venture alone? She remembers and sings her song. She has grown like a tree in her solitude. She too must feel memories pour in from the singing crickets. And this next poem is called Miracles Forgotten. In the silver dripping of stars and little beads of rain on wildflowers, a tunnel opens to let us see new horizons. What is left is the sign of better days, spoken through the water falling from the green stuff of dreams. In the tapping of raindrops on the forest floor, nature lets go of all that doesn't exist. What lives is this feeling now inside rain and moonlight, in the sweet smell of rain, in the softness and falling water in our long drought. Soon wildflowers will rise up, miracles forgotten, like rain not seen for months, dripping and dripping to the dry throat of earth. I wrote this during the drought in Texas that first began in 2021. In the drought, a lot of plants died, or they withered, or were smaller, and I wrote this in response. Once it did rain, it's a big deal in Texas, at least in the central part where we were in a drought. And I hear it's like that in West Texas as well. When it does rain, it's really loved. It's a big deal. It's like gold or something. It's something really important. I wrote that in response to that. This next poem is called White Crepe Myrtle Flowers. White crepe myrtle flowers, ruffled as snow on roses, fall from the tree. Wind pulls off the petals and carries them over the oak trees, like little white birds flying up and down green hills. I like seeing crepe myrtle trees, and I take photos of them, and up close they're really nice to see those little frilly white flowers. They kind of remind me of snow, and when they fall, sometimes if the wind is strong, the wind might pull off the flowers and it goes into the air. Kind of interesting to see, and I wrote this poem about that. This next poem was called The Cycle. It's a spiritual poem about my belief of life after death. Flowers thought dead nourish the tree and so become the tree, and the deer that died in the field of flowers becomes the field. So when we die, we become greater than what we were. We become everything. I believe we that's in the poem, but I believe we come from consciousness and that we are consciousness, and then we go back to consciousness. One book that goes into detail about those ideas is I Am That by Maharaj, if I'm saying his name right. And that was really enlightening. And that if you could sit in silence long enough, I think you find the answers. When I'm in a meditative mind, I notice that a lot of poems come to me. I never have to force out poems. I always write at the same time, but they just come out naturally. I don't have to think too hard on them. They're natural. This next poem is called Deer Among Bluebonnets. Sleeping deer in the meadow lift their faces to the forest edge. Bluebonnets form a bed for them, falling asleep from the intoxication of flowers. Deer bask in the sunlit field, among the shadows of old oak trees. So old are the trees that they dangle near the grass, like water-soaked flowers. A wind blows and all the blue flowers rise and fall in the hills like waves, and the deer fall back to sleep, drowsy from breathing in spring. This one is a prose poem. It's about deer in the spring among the bluebonnets. Bluebonnets are the state flower of Texas, and I see them a lot in the hill country. They're all throughout Texas, though, and I like the deer and seeing them among the flowers. This next poem is called To Give Color. To get away from the world, one must think like a flower and live in a true state. To give color regardless of the charred battlefield surrounding the flower. This next one is called Whose Home Is This? Home is what we carry inside us. It is a loving calm, being aware of the beautiful things around us. We see much to be grateful for. Some are blind to beauty and so cannot live to their fullest. Walking around, witness a miracle here and there. These deer sleeping on the grass in the forest. How long have their family line existed? Before the Comanche roamed? Before people rose from the dust? They hold all the wisdom along with the trees as nature grows, like the feeling of home in the heart. Granted love. If you give me your love, I wouldn't know how to hold it. Maybe as a feeling carried to a garden where flowers make me think of you, or when I'm alone in a forest and the wind causes the hair of my arms to rise up as if kissed. That's how it finds me, your love from afar. I'd hold your love in me maybe as a light, a gift, a poem that is every love poem I write, to let it rush through my blood. This next poem is called A Leaf Flickers. A leaf caught the sun in its web and flew off from the mother oak in a blue wind. On the leaf light flickered as it turned in the sky, before falling near the trunk. This bed of grass will be where creation will begin again, where acorn and mother entwine. This poem is called How Flowers Became Weeds. Following my lost soul, it led me into a field overrun with thorny wildflowers. I ignored the beautiful flowers and thought of thorns as hell, and so named these plants weeds. This was a poem I thought of when I learned that one of the flowers I liked was considered a weed. I think it's called Texas thistle. It's a thorned flower that can get really tall and has a purple flowers at the end, and sometimes you might see an insect at the end of them, but they're called weeds. which I thought was kind of funny. Because I think of weeds as something that you don't want, but this was a natural plant that I liked. This next poem is called On My Walk to the Pond. Walking into the forest, cedar limbs hold their hands against my chest as I enter its heart. Turning back, light pours down to illuminate verbena flowers, as if they are purple lanterns, guiding the way to the pond. In the fading light, wind moves the top of the trees, swaying like hair being played with by a lover. In the open field beyond the forest edge, deer look up from the field of yellow flowers and then walk on, as if I am one of them. The ending of that is just my belief that nature is inseparable, and that we're the same as nature, that nature includes, everything, that I don't consider myself different than nature, that I'm the same. This next poem is a haiku. On a lonely road, you may find yourself happy, alone at sunset. This haiku is about how you might be alone, but you might be happy alone. Some people might think of being alone as lonely, but I consider the road, it might appear lonely, but the person might be happy when walking, especially when they're in a beautiful setting or just in a good mood. This next poem is called The Source of Belief. Let go of your beliefs, then try to find them in silence without thoughts. Do trees whisper beliefs? Does the universe and soul align? While sitting still, birds gather above me, thinking me to be a tree. This was more of a philosophical poem about the source of beliefs and where they come from. Usually beliefs are handed down from generation to generation. They're not really their own. They just kind of copy them. Then I asked, where do you find beliefs in silence? Where did beliefs form over time? Where is the source of them? Which would be the mind. The mind creates beliefs. And then I asked, does the universe or do trees have beliefs? And then I realized when I sit still outside, birds seem to think that I am a tree. They just don't. I might sit beneath a tree and they seem to think I'm just an inanimate object. And I think that was funny. And then I was implying by that line that if I sit still long enough, I become peaceful as the tree. This next poem is a haiku. This is the one that was surprising to me because I was on Pinterest once and I noticed someone had shared one of my poems. And then from Pinterest, I clicked on it and I went to Facebook. And someone had shared this poem and it got more than 40,000 likes and 20,000 shares. And I wasn't told about that, so it was kind of funny. And it's my most popular poem so far. It ends up being this very short poem, a haiku. I'll read it. The world is absurd, but I still cling to its flowers like a bee drunk on spring. I think this poem encompasses most of what I am about, my philosophy on life, that the world is absurd, because I've read a lot of books on absurdity. I've read almost all of Samuel Beckett and Albert Camus. I think I used to say his last name wrong, and Kafka, many others where you might read about or just observe the world and you'll see how absurd it is, but you still focus on the good things in it. And I think it's good to acknowledge both of them, the absurdity and the beauty. I'd like to finish up and maybe read one more poem called Beggars and Takers. It is a splinter of love, the light shining in a million fragments through the forest trees. When thoughts subside, presence becomes a house of light. Love captures me in its net, though love is not external. It is inside me, emanating as a sun. Once crawling, now taking flight, a great feeling consumes me. Out of the dark night, coyotes pay me no mind, I am one of them. And the possum family passes by. I am one of them. And the faces on sidewalks and the beggars and takers of the concrete world, I am one of them. A sea of love washes over beaches where love may begin. Out of the dark night of infinite stars, the northern lights also reach us. We enjoy the colors in silence. If we used words, we'd muddle the feeling of love for the mystery and beauty of everything. So that's a selection of some of my poems from the upcoming book, Miracles Forgotten, by me, Luke Levi. I'd like to thank M.E. Forbes for having me on their podcast, Only Words. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Only Words. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, check out other episodes, share this podcast with anyone you think may enjoy it, and most of all, please do join us again next month for another conversation about poetry. Until then, live compassionately, love always, and read way more poetry. Thank you.